The dog barked at my son every night. Then I found out why. What would you do if the one creature you trusted more than anyone suddenly refused to let your own son come near you? Would you believe your son? Or the dog who had never lied to you? Not even once. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional family stories filled with mystery, unforgettable twists, and powerful life lessons, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let me tell you the night my best friend tried to warn me about my own son. My name is Edward Bennett. I am 74 years old. People often ask if living alone is difficult. The truth is, I was never alone. Not after Rex came into my life. He was my shadow. Every morning, he waited outside my bedroom before I even opened my eyes. Every afternoon, he followed me into the garden while I watered Margaret's roses. Every evening, he lay beside my recliner until I fell asleep watching old Western movies. For 5 years, that dog never gave me a reason to doubt him. He had never growled at a stranger, never barked at a neighbor, never showed his teeth. The veterinarian once smiled and said, "I wish every German shepherd behaved like Rex." So did I, because after losing my wife, Rex became the only heartbeat left inside that old house. Then Michael came home, my only son. He had started visiting every Friday evening. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes he fixed things around the house. Sometimes he simply sat with me on the porch while we watched the sunset. I used to tell people, I may be old, but I raised a good man. Looking back, I wish those words had been true. The first time Rex barked at Michael, I honestly laughed. Michael had just walked through the front door carrying a pizza. Before he could even say hello, Rex stepped between us. His ears stood straight. His body became stiff. Then, he barked. Once, twice, 3 times, loud enough to shake the hallway. I stared in disbelief. Rex. The barking stopped immediately. Michael forced a smile. I guess someone doesn't like pepperoni. We both laughed. It seemed harmless. Dogs have strange days. At least, that's what I told myself. The following Friday, Michael came again. This time, Rex wasn't waiting at the front door. He was lying beside my chair. The moment Michael reached out to hug me, Rex jumped up, stepped between us, and barked again, louder than before. Not at the door, not at the pizza, not at the grocery bags. At Michael. Only Michael. I grabbed his collar. Easy, boy. Rex obeyed, but he never took his eyes off my son. Not for a single second. Michael looked uncomfortable. Maybe I should leave. I shook my head. No, he's probably not feeling well. That same night, I checked Rex from head to tail. No injuries. No fever. Nothing. The next morning, he was back to normal. Playing fetch. Chasing squirrels. Greeting every neighbor with a wagging tail. Until Michael returned again. Every Friday, the exact same thing happened. Every visit. Every bark. Every warning. And every time, it lasted only while my son was inside the house. The second Michael drove away, Rex became the gentle old dog I had always known. By the 4th week, even Michael noticed. Dad, I think Rex hates me. I looked at my dog, then at my son, and quietly replied, No, I think he's trying to tell me something. At the time, I had no idea just how right those words would turn out to be. The next Friday, I decided to pay closer attention. Not to Michael, to Rex. For 5 years, that dog had never judged anyone without a reason. If he was trying to tell me something, I intended to find out what it was. Michael arrived just before 6. He carried a paper bag from my favorite bakery. Blueberry muffins. He smiled. I remembered. So did I. I invited him inside. Rex appeared from the living room. He didn't bark immediately. He simply stood there, watching. Every movement Michael made. Every step. Every breath. Michael noticed it too. He looks different. I nodded. Rex wasn't angry. He wasn't showing his teeth. He wasn't acting aggressive. He looked alert, like a security guard who had spotted something everyone else had missed. Michael slowly walked toward the kitchen. Rex followed, not beside him, behind him, keeping the exact same distance the entire time. 3 steps. No closer, no farther. I had never seen anything like it. During dinner, everything felt normal. We talked about baseball, the weather, My doctor's latest appointment. Michael even joked about teaching me how to use a smartphone properly. For a while, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. Then dinner ended. Michael stood up. I'll wash the dishes. You don't have to. I want to. He carried the plates into the kitchen. The moment he disappeared around the corner, Rex jumped to his feet. His ears lifted. His eyes narrowed. Then, he barked. One sharp bark. Not loud. Just enough to make me stand. I walked into the kitchen. Michael was standing at the sink, washing a plate. Nothing unusual. What happened? Michael looked confused. I don't know. I was just doing the dishes. Rex didn't bark again. He simply stared at Michael's hands. I looked down. There was nothing there except soap and water. Still, something didn't feel right. That night, after Michael left, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. Rex was already awake. Instead of sleeping on his bed, he was sitting beside the back door, looking outside, perfectly still. What is it, boy? He didn't move. I opened the curtain. Nothing. Just my backyard. The old oak tree. The wooden fence. Everything looked exactly as it always had. I shrugged. Maybe I was becoming paranoid. Maybe age was making me imagine problems where none existed. I went back to bed. The following morning, Frank Wilson stopped by. Frank had lived next door for almost 25 years. He knew Rex almost as well as I did. After hearing my story, he frowned. That's not normal. I know. Has Michael ever hurt him? Never. Then dogs usually react to one of three things. What things? Frank held up 3 fingers. Fear. Or behavior. I frowned. What do you mean? Frank scratched his chin. My old police dog never cared what people looked like. But he always reacted when someone was nervous or hiding something. I laughed softly. You think Rex thinks my son is lying? Frank shrugged. I think dogs notice things people ignore. His words stayed with me all day. The next Friday, I decided to try something different. I left my reading glasses on the coffee table. On purpose. The prescription was strong. Without them, everything beyond a few feet became blurry. When Michael arrived, I acted as though I had forgotten them upstairs. I'll be back in a minute. I slowly climbed the stairs. But halfway up, I stopped. Quietly. Without making a sound. From the hallway, I could still see part of the living room below. Michael thought I was gone. He looked around the room. Then, he did something I had never seen him do before. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small white bottle, and walked toward my kitchen. At that exact moment, Rex exploded into the loudest bark I had ever heard. Rex's bark shook the entire house. Not once. Not twice. Again. And again. Michael froze. The small white bottle was still in his hand. I rushed downstairs. Michael. He turned so quickly. The bottle slipped from his fingers. It hit the kitchen floor, rolled beneath the table. Michael immediately bent down and grabbed it. Too quickly. Far too quickly. What was that? He forced a laugh. Just vitamins. I held out my hand. Let me see. For a split second, he hesitated. Then he handed me the bottle. The label read, Vitamin D3. Nothing unusual. I looked back at Rex. He wasn't staring at the bottle anymore. He was staring at Michael. His body was rigid. His ears stood high. Every instinct in his body seemed to be shouting, Don't trust him. I handed the bottle back. I'm sorry. I guess we're all getting a little jumpy. Michael smiled. But it wasn't the same smile I had known all my life. It disappeared the moment he thought I wasn't looking. After he left that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Rex had never barked at medicine before. So why now? The next morning, I decided to call Dr. Harris, our veterinarian. He had known Rex since he was a puppy. After listening carefully, he asked one simple question. When does Rex bark? Only when my son comes into the house. And only inside. Yes. Dr. Harris became quiet. Then he said something I never forgot. Edward, dogs don't understand lies. They understand behavior. They notice changes in heartbeat, breathing, body language, even scents created by stress. I frowned. So you think Rex senses something? I think, if a calm dog suddenly distrusts one specific person, you shouldn't ignore it. His words stayed with me. The following Friday, Michael called. Dad, I'll be a little late. No problem. I still have your spare key. You can let yourself in. Thanks. After hanging up, I went outside to trim Margaret's roses. Nearly an hour passed. Then I heard Rex barking. Loud. Urgent. From inside the house. I dropped the garden shears and hurried toward the front door. The moment I stepped inside, everything became quiet. Too quiet. Michael. No answer. I walked into the living room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. Then I noticed something strange. My bedroom door was slightly open. I was certain I'd closed it before going outside. Slowly, I walked down the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. As I reached the doorway, I stopped. Michael was standing beside my bedside table. One of the drawers was open. He quickly turned around. Oh, I was looking for the flashlight. I stared at him. The flashlight is in the garage. He blinked. I forgot. Neither of us spoke. Behind me, Rex let out a low growl. Not loud. Not angry. Just enough to send a chill through my body. It was the first growl I had ever heard from him. Michael slowly closed the drawer. I should probably get going. I nodded, without another word. He walked past me. Rex stepped aside, but never stopped watching him. After the front door closed, I walked over to the bedside table. Nothing looked missing, until I opened the drawer. The small wooden box where I kept Margaret's wedding ring had been moved. Only a few inches, but enough for me to notice. I picked it up, opened it. The ring was still there. I sighed with relief. Then I looked at Rex. He walked over, rested his head against my hand, and for the first time, I asked the question I had been avoiding for weeks. Rex, what are you trying to protect me from? That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the ring. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been broken. Yet, something inside me kept whispering. Rex wasn't wrong. The next morning, I decided to test my own memory. I opened every drawer in my bedroom. Everything appeared normal. Margaret's photographs, our marriage certificate, old birthday cards. Nothing seemed out of place. Until I opened the small wooden box again. The wedding ring was still there, but underneath it, the tiny handwritten note Margaret had folded beneath the velvet lining was gone. I froze. That note had stayed there for 9 years. I had never removed it. Not once. Only 2 people knew it existed. Margaret and me. I searched the entire room. Every drawer. Every shelf. Every closet. Nothing. The note had disappeared. That afternoon, Michael called. How are you feeling, Dad? I'm all right. You sound tired. I didn't sleep much. There was a brief silence. Then he casually asked, everything okay at the house? The question caught me off guard. Why wouldn't it be? I don't know. I was just asking. His voice sounded calm. Almost. Too calm. I decided not to mention the missing note. Not yet. I'll see you Friday. Of course. After we hung up. I looked at Rex. He was lying beside the front window, watching the driveway, waiting, as if he already knew. Friday was coming. Friday evening arrived. Right on time. Michael pulled into the driveway. Before I even reached the front door, Rex was already standing beside me, completely silent. His body tense. His eyes locked on Michael's car. The door opened. Hey, Dad. Good to see you. Come in. Michael stepped inside. Rex moved between us again. No barking. This time, he simply refused to let Michael walk past him. Michael tried stepping to the left. Rex stepped left. Michael moved right. Rex moved right. It almost looked like he was guarding me. Michael forced a smile. I think your bodyguard wants the night off. I smiled politely, but inside, I wasn't smiling anymore. After dinner, Michael stood up. I'm going to use the bathroom. The downstairs one. No, I'll use yours. My bathroom. It's cleaner. Before I could answer, he was already walking down the hallway. Rex immediately followed. Every hair along his back stood up. Seconds later, a loud bark echoed through the house. Then another. Then another. I hurried toward my bedroom. When I reached the door, Michael was standing beside my nightstand again. His phone was in his hand. The drawer was open. For the second Friday in a row. What are you doing? He looked startled. I was looking for painkillers. I frowned. There are painkillers in the kitchen cabinet. He blinked. Oh, I forgot. Again. The exact same excuse. Rex let out a deep growl. His eyes weren't fixed on Michael this time. They were fixed on Michael's phone. I noticed it immediately. What did you take a picture of? Michael's face changed. I didn't take any pictures. You've got your camera open. He looked down at the screen, then quickly locked the phone. It opened by accident. Neither of us believed that. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Michael slipped the phone back into his pocket. I should head home. He walked toward the front door. Rex didn't bark. He simply watched him leave. The moment Michael's car disappeared down the street, Rex ran back to my bedroom. He stopped beside the nightstand, then nudged it with his nose. Again and again, as if he wanted me to look inside. I slowly opened the drawer. At first, everything looked the same. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The envelope containing the spare key to my safety deposit box was no longer where I had left it. It hadn't been stolen. It had been opened and carefully placed back. Someone had copied the key. I stood there, holding the envelope in my hands. Someone had opened it, copied the key, then sealed it again, hoping I'd never notice. Most people wouldn't have. But after 74 years, you learn to notice the smallest changes, especially inside your own home. I looked at Rex. He wasn't barking anymore. He simply watched me, waiting, almost as if he was asking, "Do you believe me now?" I knelt beside him, placed my hand on his head. "I'm sorry, boy. I should have trusted you sooner." He gently licked my hand. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse Michael. Not yet. First, I needed proof. Real proof. Not suspicion. The next morning, I drove to my bank, the same branch Margaret and I had used for nearly 40 years. The manager, Susan, greeted me warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett. What can I help you with?" "I'd like to check my safety deposit box." "Of course." She led me into the secure vault. Everything looked normal. My box was exactly where it had always been. She unlocked it. I inserted my key. The drawer slid open. Inside were Margaret's jewelry, our original house deed, my military medals, a few family photographs. Nothing was missing. I let out a long breath. Maybe whoever copied the key hadn't used it yet. As Susan locked the box again, she smiled. "Everything all right?" I hesitated, then asked, "Has anyone tried to access my box recently?" She checked her computer. A few seconds later, her smile disappeared. "There was one request." My stomach tightened. "When?" "Last Tuesday." I frowned. "I wasn't here last Tuesday." "I know." "The request wasn't completed." "Why?" "The person didn't have the second key. Only I carried the original. Without it, the box couldn't be opened." "Did you recognize the person?" She looked apologetic. "I'm afraid I can't share that information." I nodded. I understood. But inside, one question refused to leave my mind. Who had tried? When I returned home, Rex was waiting at the front door, tail wagging, happy to see me. For a few peaceful hours, everything felt normal again. Then, at exactly 7:12 that evening, my security camera app sent a notification to my phone. Motion detected. I frowned. I hadn't installed those cameras. Michael had, just 2 months earlier. He said they would help keep me safe. I opened the live feed. The backyard was empty. The front porch was empty. Then I switched to the hallway camera. My heart skipped. Someone was inside my house, wearing a dark hoodie, their face hidden beneath a baseball cap. They were walking toward my bedroom. I looked around in panic. I was sitting in my own living room. Rex was beside me. The hallway outside was empty. The live feed was delayed by almost 20 minutes. Someone had entered the house while I was out. I immediately opened the recording. Fast-forwarded. The figure reached my bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, looked inside, then pulled out a phone. They took several photographs. As the person turned toward the camera, the porch light reflected off their face. Just for a second, long enough for me to recognize them. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a burglar. It was Michael. I slowly lowered the phone. Across the room, Rex stood up, walked to the front window, and stared silently at the driveway. 5 minutes later, headlights appeared. Michael's truck pulled into my driveway. He stepped out, smiling, holding a bag of groceries. "Dad, I thought I'd surprise you. I looked at him, then at the security footage still playing on my phone. For the first time in my life, I didn't know whether I was looking at my son or a complete stranger. Michael stood at the front door, smiling, holding a bag of groceries. Dad, I brought your favorite chicken soup. I didn't answer. I simply looked at him. Then, I looked down at my phone. The security footage was still paused. His face, his jacket, the same baseball cap. There was no mistake. He had been inside my bedroom while I wasn't home. Michael noticed my expression. Everything okay? I slowly locked my phone. Come in. He stepped inside. The moment the front door closed, Rex walked between us. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stood there, watching Michael. Every movement, every breath. Michael forced a smile. I think he's still upset with me. I quietly replied. I think he's protecting me. For the first time, Michael's smile disappeared. We sat in the living room. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, I broke the silence. Michael, were you here this afternoon? He looked surprised. No. I've been at work all day. I nodded slowly. So you didn't stop by? No. Not even for 5 minutes. He laughed nervously. Dad, why would I lie about something like that? I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, and placed it on the coffee table. The paused security footage filled the screen. Michael looked down. The color drained from his face. For several seconds, he didn't move. Then he whispered, Where did you get that? My security cameras. He swallowed hard. I can explain. I leaned forward. I'm listening. He rubbed his hands together. I came to check on you. You weren't home. I thought maybe you'd fallen somewhere. So you used your spare key? Yes. Then why did you go into my bedroom? He hesitated. I was looking for your insurance papers. I shook my head. They aren't in my bedroom. I know that now. His answers were coming too fast, too rehearsed. I asked one more question. Why did you photograph my nightstand drawer? Michael stared at the floor. He couldn't answer. Not this time. The silence felt endless. Then, Rex slowly walked toward Michael. He lowered his head, sniffed around Michael's jacket. Suddenly, he grabbed the sleeve with his teeth. Not hard enough to bite. Just enough to stop him from moving. Rex, I stood up. But Rex didn't let go. Instead, he pulled gently, as if he wanted the jacket, not the man. Michael panicked. Get him off me. I grabbed Rex's collar. The moment I pulled him away, something fell from Michael's jacket pocket. A small silver key. It slid across the wooden floor, stopping right in front of my feet. I picked it up. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just any key. Stamped into the metal were 3 tiny numbers. 317, the exact number of my safety deposit box. I slowly looked up at Michael. You told me you'd never been to the bank. He stared at the key. I can explain. I closed my hand around it. No. This time, you're going to tell me the truth. Before Michael could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed across the screen. Private investigator, James Collins. Michael's eyes widened. He immediately tried to silence the call, but I had already seen the name. A private investigator? Why would my own son hire someone to investigate me? Michael stared at his phone. It kept ringing. Private investigator, James Collins. He quickly declined the call. The room fell silent. I looked at him. A private investigator? What exactly are you investigating? Michael rubbed his face. It's not what you think. I sighed. That's becoming your favorite sentence. But every time you say it, I trust you a little less. He lowered his head. I didn't hire him to hurt you. Then why? Another long silence. Finally, because I thought someone else already had. I frowned. What does that mean? Michael looked directly into my eyes. For almost 2 months, I've believed someone has been entering your house. I laughed in disbelief. And yet, I'm looking at security footage of you entering my house. I know, but I wasn't the only one. He slowly reached into his wallet, removed several printed photographs, and handed them to me. They were security camera images. Not mine. Different angles. Different dates. The first photograph showed a man standing outside my backyard fence, late at night, face hidden beneath a hood. The second photograph showed the same man, looking through my living room window. The third made my heart stop. The stranger was standing only a few feet away from my bedroom window. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. 3 weeks ago. I looked up. Who is he? Michael shook his head. I don't know. I hired James Collins to find out. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to scare you. I wasn't convinced. So instead, you secretly searched my bedroom? He nodded. I thought whoever was watching you might already have hidden something inside the house. I was looking for cameras, tracking devices, anything. I stared at him. Part of his story made sense. Another part didn't. Then I asked, the safety deposit box key. His face fell again. What's that got to do with a stalker? He took a deep breath. I copied the key. I wanted the investigator to check if anyone had tampered with your documents. You could have asked me. I know. But after Mom died, you stopped trusting anyone. I was afraid you'd say no. Before I could answer, Rex suddenly jumped to his feet. His ears pointed toward the front door. Not Michael. The front door. A low growl filled the room. Every hair along his back stood up. Then, he barked. Once, twice, 3 times. Exactly the same way he had barked at Michael for the past 6 weeks. We all turned toward the window. A black SUV was parked across the street. Its engine was still running. The driver's face couldn't be seen. The windows were completely tinted. I frowned. Do you know that vehicle? Michael slowly stood. His expression changed instantly. No. It can't be. What? He looked terrified. That's the same SUV James Collins has been following. At that exact moment, the SUV's headlights switched on. Then, it slowly pulled away from the curb, without making a sound. As it disappeared around the corner, Rex stopped barking. For the first time, I realized something that sent a chill through my entire body. Maybe Rex hadn't been warning me about Michael. Maybe he had been trying to warn me that someone was following my son. The black SUV disappeared around the corner. No one spoke. Rex remained at the front window, watching, waiting, as though he expected it to return. I looked at Michael. Tell me everything. He nodded, then quietly sat down. I should have told you weeks ago. I was just trying to protect you. I folded my arms, then started at the beginning. Michael took a deep breath. About 2 months ago, I started noticing the SUV outside my office. At first, I thought it was nothing, but then it appeared again. Outside my house, outside Emma's school, and finally, outside yours. A chill ran through me. Did you call the police? I did. They said there wasn't enough evidence. So I hired James Collins, the private investigator. I slowly nodded. For the first time, his story sounded believable. But one question still remained. Why didn't Rex bark at the SUV? Michael looked at the old German Shepherd. He couldn't. What do you mean? He only barked after I came inside, before either of us could say another word. Someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Rex exploded into furious barking. Not toward Michael. Toward the door. I carefully looked through the peephole. A man in his early 60s stood on the porch. Gray beard. Dark jacket. Leather briefcase. He raised both hands, showing he wasn't a threat. My name is James Collins, the private investigator. Michael rushed to the door. What are you doing here? James looked exhausted. I've been trying to reach you all day. Michael opened the door. James stepped inside. The moment he saw Rex, he froze. So this is the dog. I frowned. You know Rex? James nodded. I've watched your security footage. He isn't reacting to your son. Everyone looked at him. What are you talking about? James placed his briefcase on the table, then removed several printed photographs. I reviewed every second of your camera footage. Every Friday. For 6 straight weeks. He spread the photos across the table. Each one showed Michael entering the house. Each one showed Rex barking. But then, James pointed to something none of us had noticed. The living room window. In every single photograph, the reflection showed the same black SUV, parked across the street. Every Friday, the exact moment Michael arrived. I leaned closer. He was right. You had to look carefully. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. James looked directly at me. Mr. Bennett, I don't believe your dog was barking at your son. I believe he was barking at the man watching your house. The room fell silent. Michael whispered, "So he wasn't trying to stop me." James slowly shook his head. "No, he was trying to warn both of you." At that exact moment, Rex ran toward the back of the house. His barking became even louder. James turned toward the kitchen window. His face suddenly lost all color. He whispered, "He's here." I looked outside. Standing beside my backyard fence was a man wearing a black hoodie. He wasn't trying to hide anymore. He was simply watching us. Then, he smiled, turned around, and disappeared into the darkness. For the first time, I understood why Rex had never stopped barking. He hadn't sensed danger inside my home. He had sensed someone waiting just outside it. The backyard fell silent. The man in the black hoodie was gone. Daniel rushed to the back door. By the time he reached the fence, there was no one there. Only darkness. James sighed. "I know who hired him." The room became silent. Michael stepped forward. "Who?" "Everything." As I stared at the old newspaper, a terrible thought crossed my mind. "He's been watching my son because he couldn't get close to me." James nodded. "Exactly." Michael slowly sat down. All this time, he thought Rex hated him, but Rex had been doing something else. Every Friday, the moment Michael arrived, the black SUV also appeared. Rex wasn't reacting to Michael. He was reacting to the danger that followed him. Just then, Rex ran back to the front window. His ears stood straight. A deep growl escaped his throat. James slowly looked outside. His face turned pale. He came back. Across the street, the black SUV was parked again. This time, the driver wasn't hiding. He was looking directly at the house. And then, he raised one hand. Not to wave, to point. Straight at me. Richard Lawson kept pointing toward the house. He never smiled. He never moved. He simply stared, as though he had been waiting 30 years. For this exact moment, Rex barked so hard, the front windows rattled. James immediately picked up his phone. "I'm calling the police." Before he could press a single button, the black SUV pulled away. Fast. Within seconds, it disappeared around the corner. Michael ran outside. "Dad, stay here." But by the time he reached the street, the SUV was gone. Nothing. No license plate. No witnesses. Only silence. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Two officers listened carefully as James explained everything. The photographs. The surveillance. The SUV. Richard Lawson. One officer looked at me. "Mr. Bennett, has Richard ever contacted you directly?" I shook my head. "Not in 30 years. The officer wrote something in his notebook. If he approaches you again, call us immediately." Then they left. I watched their patrol car disappear. Something about all of this didn't feel right. Richard hadn't come to steal. He hadn't threatened anyone. He wanted us to know he was watching. That was far more frightening. The next morning, James returned. He looked exhausted. I spent the entire night checking Richard's financial records. And he recently bought an abandoned warehouse. What for? I don't know. But there's something else. He handed me a photograph. It showed Richard standing outside the warehouse. He wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a young woman, no older than 25. Blonde hair, blue jacket. She looked strangely familiar. I frowned. I've seen her before. Michael took the picture. His eyes widened. "Dad, that's Emily." "Emily, my assistant. The one who's worked for me for almost 3 years." The room fell silent. James nodded. "She's been feeding Richard information. Your office schedule. Your Friday visits. Everything." Michael buried his face in his hands. "So every Friday, Richard knew exactly when I'd be here." James quietly answered, "Yes." I looked down at Rex. For weeks, I thought he hated my son. The truth was much simpler. Every Friday, Michael unknowingly brought danger right to my front door. That afternoon, Michael stood beside Rex in the backyard. For several minutes, neither of them moved. Finally, Michael knelt down. "I'm sorry, buddy. I blamed you. I thought you hated me." Rex walked closer. For a second, I wasn't sure what would happen. Then, he gently pressed his head against Michael's chest. Michael wrapped his arms around him and quietly cried, "I should have trusted you." Rex licked his hand, as if to say, "It's okay." I watched from the porch. My eyes filled with tears. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't begin with words. Sometimes, it begins with a loyal dog who never stopped trying to protect the people he loved. But our story wasn't over yet, because the following morning, the police called. They had searched Richard Lawson's warehouse. What they found inside changed everything. The phone rang just after sunrise. I answered on the second ring. Mr. Bennett? It was the sheriff. We searched Richard Lawson's warehouse. I held my breath. And there was a long pause. We found hundreds of photographs. Of your house. Of your son. And of your dog. I looked at Rex. He was asleep beside the fireplace. Peaceful. For the first time in weeks. The sheriff continued. There was something else. We found notebooks. Richard had been watching your Friday routine. He knew your son visited every Friday. He knew exactly when your house wouldn't be empty. My stomach tightened. What was he planning? We're still investigating. But one thing is certain. He never got the opportunity. I frowned. What stopped him? The sheriff didn't hesitate. Your dog. 3 days later, Richard Lawson was arrested while trying to leave the state. Inside his vehicle, police found maps of my neighborhood, photographs of my home, and detailed notes about my daily routine. One page had a sentence circled 3 times. Wait until the old man is alone. Another sentence had been crossed out. Dog makes entry impossible. I slowly lowered the report. For weeks, I thought Rex was creating problems. The truth, he had been preventing one. That evening, Michael came to see me. He stood on the porch for almost a minute before knocking. When I opened the door, he looked different. Not because of his clothes. Because the fear was gone. Dad, I owe you the truth. I stepped aside. Come in. Rex walked toward him. I held my breath. For a few seconds, the two of them simply looked at each other. Then, Rex slowly wagged his tail. Just once. Michael smiled through his tears. I guess. He finally knows I'm not the danger anymore. I quietly answered. No. He knows. You finally stopped hiding the truth. Michael sat across from me. I kept thinking I could fix everything by myself. I didn't want you to worry. So I lied. I searched your room. I copied your key. I hired a private investigator. I made every decision alone. I nodded. And every secret made you look guilty. He lowered his head. I know. I should have trusted you. I smiled sadly. And I should have trusted Rex. A week later, James Collins stopped by one last time. The case is over. Richard will be prosecuted. Your family is safe. Before leaving, he looked at Rex. I've worked with trained K-9 units for 20 years. But this old shepherd did something most people never could. What was that? James smiled. He never judged what he saw. He reacted to what he sensed. Sometimes, instinct sees the truth, long before our eyes do. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Every Friday, Michael still came for dinner. Only now, he knocked before using his spare key. And every Friday, the first one to greet him was Rex. Tail wagging. No barking. No growling. No fear. It wasn't because Rex had changed. It was because the danger had finally disappeared. Today, I'm 74 years old. Rex sleeps a little more, walks a little slower, and his muzzle has turned almost completely gray. But every morning, he still waits for me by the front door, just like he always has. People often tell me, dogs don't know right from wrong. I simply smile, because I know better. Sometimes, the most loyal heart in your family has 4 legs, a wagging tail, and the courage to keep warning you, even when nobody believes him. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. Would you have trusted your son or your dog? If you believe loyalty should never be ignored, please subscribe. My name is Edward Bennett. Thank you for spending this time with me. And give your dog an extra hug today. Sometimes, they protect us in ways we'll never fully understand.